the college football you guys grew up with, the BCS computer system, um, you know, number one really meaning something, all the way down to number 25, all that is over. Welcome in, everyone. It's Bando's Breakdowns, episode 38. Hope you guys are doing well on this Wednesday afternoon. My name is Zain Bando, and thank you so much for tuning in. We're nearing the mid to late point of February now. We're past the NFL season being over. It's been about a little bit over a week and a half or so. We've officially transitioned into the winter sports, spring sports cycle. So I'm very, very happy to bring you is along today as we chronicle the world in sports in a very short amount of time. Before we get into anything, though, just wanted to give you guys a quick reminder, too, to please be sure to listen to Bando's Breakdowns wherever you get your podcasts. That could be Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Acast, YouTube Premium, wherever you get them. You can be anywhere, use any device, on the go, at work, at a lunch break, etc., etc. You can do so, again, wherever you get those. And then, of course, be sure that if you are on the audio-only side, to go back over to the YouTube home, youtube.com/ETB Network. We're slowly but surely creeping towards the 930 subscriber mark on the road to 1,000. So again, if you like the content that you see either from me or the stuff that you see on Football Forecast, which is coming back as a off-season show with Kanan and Anthony, or if you like any of the other stuff, Forever Power 5 from the college football season, we have all of those archives out currently and a bunch of other shows too. So if you like the content, be sure to go over there. And of course, you can check out our new venture, our Substack, edbnetwork.substack.com, for all of the extra bonus content that you don't get from other shows. Whether you like the stuff from Grant Winsauer, he's doing some NFL stuff right now. Whether you like Will Charlton's Noteworthy in the NCAA that came out yesterday evening, any of that stuff, you can go and check it out right now. Again, not asking for much, $5 a month. You can go and check all of that stuff out. Then, of course, I would be remiss if I did not remind everyone that Bando's Breakdowns is presented by Playback. Again, they've been a great sponsor to us for about a year and a half or so now. We just did the NBA All-Star Game. It was a new format. It was pretty interesting. I was on for most of it. A bunch of the other guys were. Very, very close to hitting some milestones in that membership community. So again, if you like that content, again, and you can go to Playback and check it out. But without further ado, here we go. Watching sports is more fun with others, but we spend too much of our time watching alone. Playback is a virtual space where communities can stream live sports together with everyone perfectly synced up. Creators can hop on stage, deliver their own play-by-play analysis and commentary, and invite viewers up for Q&A. Playback makes watching sports fully interactive and a social experience, from playing fantasy sports, repping your favorite players and teams, and watching with the commentators and communities you care about. Win or lose, sports are best enjoyed together. And of course, you can do so right now when we take a couple seconds, and it's free. Playback.tv/ETB Network for all of that wonderful content. We're going to get into what we're going to be discussing on the show here today. So again, thank you so much for tuning in. If you missed last week's episode, it's going to be a bit of a continuation of that, but it's also going to be kind of a unique twist into some things that we don't normally talk about on the show, which is going to be very apparent with the very first topic. But before we get into that first topic, let's go over Zain's overview. What's going to be discussed today? We're going to talk about some Four Nations hockey. We'll talk about the USA and all that stuff. We're going to talk about this new report that's come out from Yahoo Sports' Ross Dellinger about the very realistic possibility that the college football playoff, could be expanding to either 14 or 16 teams. My initial reaction to that. We'll be going over UFC Vegas 102. We'll be doing a brief preview of UFC Seattle and a couple of other things as well on the college end. But let's get into it, though. So, 3 fights in 9 seconds. What more can I say? This was one of the most viral videos of the whole weekend. It was really, really just unbelievable. I think hockey is really trying to bring back the casual viewer. And I think that's the most interesting thing about this. I think a lot of people really embraced this incident. Again, it was a super viral moment. Former UFC welterweight champion George St. Pierre was in attendance, which was also pretty cool. Just to give some crossover name value recognition here, but I don't know, man. I think overall this Four Nations thing, I think it's really cool because it gives you a it gives you kind of a sense, it gives you kind of gives you kind of a perspective, and I mean overall, I mean it's really interesting. So unfortunately, well, at the time that this is going to be coming out, it'll already be a few days old now. But Team USA was defeated by Sweden, unfortunately, in the face-off matchup. So that run, that run looks like it's unfortunately over. But with that being said, though, I think there's a lot of excitement just around this whole event and this whole venture. And I think that's the really cool thing about it. Um or or excuse me. Let me okay, so Team USA lost to Sweden in the Four Nations face off, but this Canada one, should be very very interesting. So that's obviously going to be taking place on Thursday. It's a little bit of a confusing format, and especially for someone like myself who doesn't fully or who hasn't fully followed this. It's very much kind of out of my lens, if you will. But I do think it's very interesting. By the way, Charlie McAvoy, for those of you who are Bruins fans, has been ruled out for Thursday's match against Canada. So that'll be interesting. But overall, though, I just think this is great. I think it's great for hockey. I think it's great for those who aren't a fan of the All Star Weekend. And I think overall, it's just one of those things where it's going to take time to evolve. It's going to take time to develop, but to have multiple viral videos of multiple fights occur at the very beginning of Saturday's game. Very, very interesting stuff. And as a layperson who's the most casual NHL fan, was a much bigger fan when the Blackhawks were winning their Stanley Cups in the 2010s. It's very, very interesting and has me intrigued to see more. And I'm excited to see this USA Canada final because it should be very, very interesting. Although it is tough though, but it goes to show how good of a team Sweden was if they were able to do that as well. So I'm excited to see how the rest of this plays out, and I'm looking forward to seeing too just kind of where it goes. The same with the NBA All Star Game, very very different format. Got a bunch of there were a bunch of teams in this format. I watched two of the games Sunday night, and of course, I think it got a lot of mixed reactions. I personally, as someone who's not the biggest NBA fan in the world, I didn't really care too much for it. The coolest part to me was the Mr. Beast challenge. I think that kid being able to hit one shot before Damian Lillard hit three of them was super awesome. Good for him. He deserves it. He deserves all the praise that he's getting, and that celebration was unbelievable. But I don't know, man. I just think the All Star game doesn't really make a ton of sense to me. LeBron James didn't play in it. It just doesn't feel like a game that matters. Like it feels, and someone said it well, it feels like the All Star game is becoming the Pro Bowl. And I feel like the NBA needs to do something different to captivate more fans because I understand you want to give people something to go to, and it may just be my brain being like super wired in a football slash combat sports heavy phase as it has been for a while now. But I want to see entertainment, I want to see excitement, like at least with the Reese's Senior Bowl, for guys that are going to be going into the NFL draft. At least those guys are playing knowing that scouts are watching them, and it could impact their draft stock, whether they get drafted, where they get drafted, et cetera, et cetera. It's a big deal. I just feel like these guys in the NBA All-Star game, even these 3-on-3 games, it's like I just feel like these guys don't care. I just feel like they're trying to go out there and try to be as virally entertaining as possible, whether they're good or bad. And I think that kind of dumbs down the sport of basketball a little bit. I'd rather watch a random college basketball game, to be honest with you, than the NBA All-Star game, because nothing about what happened on Sunday night, in my opinion, was ever appealing. I mean, even the stuff that they tried to do in the arena to keep the fans engaged, to me, was just extremely cringeworthy. It was something I was not a fan of. I think the NBA needs to reassess what they really want to do with the All-Star game, because the dunk contest is still cool. That's probably my favorite part of the whole weekend. But that 3-on-3 tournament, to me, was just really, really just weird. It just looked weird on TV. I don't know. I just think the whole product to me just seemed extremely out of place. So I was not a fan of this at all, and I really do hope that they make significant changes, because if they do, and they cater it to the I'm just going to say it, and it's not a negative thing. If they cater it more to the casual fan, where it's either just skills competitions, or if it's, maybe not a full game, but maybe you play like some sort of a shootout type game where, it's, it's instead of 3-on-3, it's like hockey, where you have to make a certain number of threes as a team before another team does. Like, that to me is more stressful than watching a 3-on-3 game with guys who simply are there, just for the entertainment value of it, than actually trying to better themselves. Because to me, if you're gonna play in an all-star game, you're gonna do it for a couple of reasons. You're gonna do it to say you did it, and number two, you should do it to say that you are better than the person that you were, when you were playing games in the first half of the season. And I feel like some of these players just don't do that. And I think LeBron sitting out of it, I think turned a lot of people off. You got these guys making tons of money, more money than I could ever even envision, and these guys just simply don't want to, don't want to participate. I don't understand. Either participate, say what you think is wrong with the format, or just let it be. But the current format, the way they have it right now, to me, just simply doesn't work. I'm not a fan. I don't know if I'll ever be a fan of it. And I think the All-Star game reminded me why I've almost stopped watching the Bulls almost entirely, just because, hey, that team is terrible. No, number one, as is the majority of the Chicago sports teams, and number two, I think the products you put on the floor matters. I think a lot more people are going to be invested when the team that you cover, or the team that you support, um is playing better, and not trying to lose. Well, no team is ever trying to lose for a higher draft position. At least that's what they claim. But let me just say this: I'd rather feel better about myself if I was watching a product that I could actually stomach watching. And right now, the team that I support, at least the NBA team I support, is not that team. So simple as that. All right, let's move over into some football stuff. Could it be the end of NFL Red Zone as we know it? It appears Scott Hanson's contract negotiations, per multiple reports, are at a standstill. The latest info that I can give you with this, because it was a few days ago that I saw it. Let me just double check here. Here we go. NFL Red Zone. Okay, so the latest I can give you as of 3 days ago, he is a free agent per Front Office Sports, and his NFL network expired after the season ended. So huge news for the NFL Red Zone sicko community. I'm just gonna say this: if NFL media lets Scott Hanson walk, they are making a tremendous mistake. Okay, for those of you who have never watched Red Zone, and I know that there are people in my life and people in general who have never seen the channel before, it is literally the most ridiculous way to watch the NFL on a Sunday afternoon. You sit there beginning at noon Central, and you just sit there and you watch football. There's no agenda. There's no hidden bias. There's no commercials. There's no cutaways when there doesn't need to be. This is the literal show that, to me, I believe makes the football viewing experience what it is. It is a gold mine. Whenever I can't, whenever the Bears are on, or whenever a team that I'm particularly interested in for that week is not on, that's when I soak in Red Zone for as long as I do, because Red Zone is the lifeblood of an NFL Sunday, in my opinion. You mean to tell me that you can sit and watch 7 hours of basically, and I say basically because they were testing commercials at the end of the season, 7 hours of essentially commercial free football on a Sunday afternoon? Nothing really gets better than that. And I just think Scott Hanson is, and now I'm going to say this too, because I grew up with Andrew Siciliano, but I think after watching Scott Hanson for a season, is this was like the first full year that or I think the first or second full year that Siciliano was fully off it. I can understand why people think Scott Hanson is the best red zone anchor in the business. I like Siciliano because he was more level headed, and I grew up, with DirecTV, and I still have DirecTV, so I'm used to the old NFL Sunday Ticket format, if you will. So warming up to Scott Hanson was definitely different, but being able to watch every single game every Sunday, there's really nothing better than that. I really do hope the NFL makes the right decision, keeps him on in some capacity, because he definitely deserves it. And what I think is even more interesting about this whole thing too is I think that if the NFL decides to go the route that they're trying to take this thing, I I personally think that the NFL needs to figure out a way to, instead of maybe get rid of Scott Hanson, but maybe they have multiple versions of Red Zone again. Maybe they don't just have Siciliano. Maybe they bring Siciliano back into the fold. They keep Hanson, but and they also have other anchors that can do NFL Red Zone type shows for those that maybe want Red Zone in a different way. So maybe you just get a Red Zone that's just the NFC. Maybe you get a Red Zone that's just the AFC. I'm just spitballing. I don't know if any of those plans are in the works at all, but I think Red Zone has become such a product that you could branch it out and do so many different things with it on a Sunday, to where it literally caters to whichever NFL viewer it wants. So I'm excited to see how this develops. I really do hope for Scott Hanson's sanity that he will be back on my TV screen this September, because I don't know if my NFL experience will ever be the same if Red Zone somehow, some way ever goes away. And if it goes to ESPN, I think there's a huge conflict of interest there, but that's another discussion for another time. We have to move on in the interest of time. It appears, according to Yahoo Sports' Ross Dellinger, that major changes are coming to the college football playoff beginning in 2026. This is gigantic. So the proposal on the table is potentially, this isn't fully hashed out yet, but it'll either be 14 teams in the field or 16 teams, and there's a bunch of different stipulations as to automatic qualifiers and stuff like that. There's a bunch of jumbo that we don't frankly have time to go over. So I'm just going to give you my immediate reaction. The SEC adding one more game in conference, which is potentially a Big Ten SEC crossover matchup, is a genius idea. And I know people are saying, Zan, what happened to tradition? What happened to pageantry? What happened to the college football that we grew up? Simply put, guys, the college football that you guys grew up with is long gone. Okay. The college football you guys grew up with, the BCS computer system, um, you know, number one really meaning something, all the way down to number 25, all that is over. Okay. Simply put, in my opinion, these conferences are looking for the bottom line. They're looking to see how many people can tune into these games on a weekly basis. They want to make the biggest and best games possible every year. You mean to tell me that an SEC Big Ten tilt between Texas and Ohio State rotated the next year by Texas versus Michigan, or a game between Illinois and Ole Miss one year and Illinois versus South Carolina the next year, wouldn't draw eyeballs? Of course it frickin' would. Okay? And it goes to show, too, that the SEC can hang with the big boys before, a bunch of those teams go to the playoff. And there's also a scenario, too, where the champions of the conferences at the end of the regular season don't play anymore in a formal championship game, where instead it's playing games between the other remaining teams that are still in the field to see who gets in and who gets left out, essentially giving every conference champion a bye that they had, but now they have it in such a way to where they don't have to worry about playing a championship game and taking 2 weeks off and then having to play again. They have an ample amount of time to prepare. So I think, and I agree with this take from CBS Sports' Tom Fernelli, and I wrote about his rationale earlier this week in the Sporting News. I agree with the fact that Fornelli is actually warming up to this idea that this might be the best thing that college football needs. Because now you're going to have fans of teams where by the beginning of December, every game matters. Okay, you're not sitting there, watching the conference championship game, let's say between Oregon and Penn State, like it was a year ago. I'm just using a hypothetical. It's not like you're sitting there watching the game and you have zero stakes in the game. Okay, based on this new scenario that's being laid out, Illinois would have probably been in one of those playing games. I don't know what the other game would have been. I don't remember off the top of my head. But my point in saying that is for those teams that are playing, those 4 teams that play that weekend for a chance to get in, and the loser is either out or on the outside looking in, depending on what happens in all the other games around the country. That is huge. That is huge. You mean to tell me we get a playoff appetizer before the meal? That's that sounds great. And their local games too. You get a game in Indy for the Big Ten. You get a game in Charlotte for the ACC. You get a game in Atlanta for the SEC. You get a game in Texas and the Big 12. I mean, that is just unbelievable. Now, I want to get to the other part of this because it seems like it might be going this way, but a super league essentially, which would cater towards the SEC and the Big Ten, essentially becoming an NFC AFC model. Okay, as someone who is biased, I'm just going to openly admit it. As someone who is openly biased towards wanting the Big Ten to do well for some obvious reasons. Some are. Let me just say this: some I have chosen to make public, and others I would rather keep private. But in that sense, I think a Big Ten SEC Super League for college football is a brilliant idea because now you've streamlined it to where everybody's going to play everybody. Okay. That's just going to be the fact of the matter. And you're going to get stakes where you could either have a Big Ten national championship, which has really never been possible in recent years, or you can have an SEC national championship, which has been relatively common in recent years, but not as common as what this new format could make it out to be. So I personally think that some of these other conferences need to band together and they need to say, okay, we need to figure out if we're going to meet the SEC's demands, or we got to figure out another way to play football, because I bet you some of these teams will not want part in this and other teams will want part in this. I mean, shoot, look at what Notre Dame is going to do. They're going to be, based on this scenario, they're basically set. As long as they're one of the top 4 teams, and as long as they either go undefeated or lose one game as an independent program, they're basically set. So I personally think this expansion thing is awesome. I'm a sicko. I want more football anyway. And I think some of these matchups, based on the trajectory of the sport over the next few years, are going to be fascinating. So I'm really, really hopeful that this new wave of college football that's beginning here is going to benefit everybody involved, and I think it is a chance to do so. So excited to see what more comes out of this. All right, here we go. So UFC Vegas 102, just really quick from the Apex in Las Vegas. I was right. Jared Cannonier did finish Gregory Rodriguez. I was a round off though. He won in round 4. I said he would win in either rounds 2 or rounds 3. I think I did switch my round prediction from Tuesday night on the last episode of the MMA Outsiders to last week's Bandos breakdowns. But in any event, Jared Cannonier gets it done, beats a very, very talented guy in Rodriguez overall. A fight that, it seemed like Cannonier wasn't going to win early on, but he was able to come back and do so. There were a couple of other performances on the card, but Pat and I went over this event on the most recent edition of the MMA Outsiders. You can go check that out. Didn't do that well on predictions. Finished roughly 500. You'll see my overall record this coming week when you see UFC Seattle predictions. But for now, though, a decent show, some nice prospect wins, and this one can be put to bed as we move on to Seattle. So we'll get to Seattle at the end of the show. But before we do that, we've got Zain Zinger to talk about. And of course, because this was breaking news all of a sudden, Saturday night, Terrence Shannon Jr. comes back to Illinois. Very, very highly anticipated ceremony to honor all of his accomplishments at the University of Illinois, all of his accolades. I would be here for another 40 minutes if I listed all of them to you, so I'm not going to do that. But what I am going to say is, I was not there, but shout out to one of my buddies. He did get me a signed Terrence Shannon Jr. bobblehead, so I can't wait to see that. That's number one. And number two, it looked like from everything I saw up until the game, and then we'll get to this part in a second, up until the game, looked like Terrence was having just a total blast, just being back on campus for the first time in a while. Obviously now on the Timberwolves, doing his thing there. He needs more minutes. They got to keep playing TSJ more because when he plays, that dude is freaking awesome. So, but that's partially the Illinois defender in me speaking there. But I really do like how Shannon Jr. has really carried himself. With that being said, there was a incident at halftime, a very well-known incident now. It's been viral all over the internet. Shannon Jr. had his jersey banner get or attempt to get lifted into the rafters, except it was upside down. So this was not shown on TV, thank goodness. But Robert Rosenthal, the publisher of his own website, Illini Board, very, very prominent site. He's been covering Illinois for forever now. He posted the video and it went completely viral. And Shannon Jr. just laughed it off. Josh Whitman apologized for the incident to occur, which was good on him. But again, though, just extremely disappointing. They put in so much marketing. They put in so much time to try to ensure that this would go off without a hitch. And unfortunately, it did. And that's the most disappointing part about it is that moment will never be erased. And even though Shannon Jr. was able to take pictures with the banner afterward, with Whitman, Underwood, family, whatever, it'll never take away from the moment that thousands and thousands of people saw in State Farm Center Saturday night and millions of others watching on Fox. Really, really disappointing. And to make matters even worse, Michigan State won the game. Illinois didn't hit a field goal in the last 8.5 minutes, lost the game 79-65 after being up by 1 point, which, again, there was that joke that Illinois got negative points. It was because they reviewed a call and they overturned it. So not a good night for Illinois, but I'm very, very grateful that Whitman was able to go up in front of the media, face the music, apologize, say that it'll never happen again. No word on whether the person who did it has been reprimanded. I really do hope that it was just truly an honest mistake, and I bet it was. But again, though, at the same time, they had hours to prepare for this thing. I don't know. It's a total mess. At the end of the day, though, Shannon Jr. was given his flowers. He got to come back to Illinois. I guess Illinois is having fun with it. They just posted an upside down photo of a Shannon Jr. like mural type thing that they posted. So I think they're having as much fun with it as they can, but still can never take away from the moment. And just briefly now, with the college basketball roundup, Illinois again loses 79-65 to Michigan State. They're in a dire stretch of their schedule coming down near the end of the season, unranked. Now they have to, this is going to come out after Illinois plays Wisconsin, but they have to worry about 2 games this week, the Badgers, and then, of course, Duke on Saturday night. And, it's going to be interesting. I mean, Morris Johnson is out with a wrist injury. The Big Ten is kind of all over the place. Michigan State, Michigan, and Purdue are going to probably going to fight for a Big Ten regular season title and a good seed in the tournament. Overall, that's been a great league. A lot of parity around hoops. Auburn, Alabama was a good game too. But again, if you want more of the college basketball stuff, more than what all have time to cover, you can go check out Will Charlton's Noteworthy in the NCAA for all of that. Then, of course, UFC Seattle, Song Yadong, Henry Cejudo main event. This card has taken huge hits, multiple cancellations, moved fights, etc., etc. But the main event is intact. I like Cejudo to get it done. Experience is experience. I think Song Yadong has fought some very, very credible fighters in the past, but Cejudo, a former champion Olympic wrestler, I had to throw that in there. I just think his pace will be too much. I like him to win a decision. Get more detailed preview of that fight, as well as the rest of the fights on the card, courtesy of the MMA Outsiders. But before we move away from this topic, just wanted to give you guys a quick programming note on when to expect these fights to occur. It is essentially a pay-per-view start time, 6 Eastern, main card at 9 p.m. Eastern. Some good fights on the card. Cejudo, Song Yadong, Brendan Allen, Anthony Hernandez, Rob Font, Gene Matsamento, a late replacement, Gene Silva, Bahar Dazarian, Alonzo Menefield, Julius Walker, a former college basketball player, taking this fight on short notice. Good for him. Let me just quickly break down this main event for you. Cejudo coming in at 16-4, Yadong coming in at 21-8-1 overall. So let's take a look. So this event, Saturday night, UFC Fight Night from Seattle, Washington, first time in a long time that they've been to the Pacific Northwest. Cejudo has won 3 out of his last 5, while Yadong has done the same. And it looks like Tapology loves Song Yadong to get it done 65% to 35%. Reason being is Cejudo's long layoff. So I totally understand that. Yadong minus 270, Cejudo plus 220 there as well. So an interesting fight to say the least. Again, that's the main event of the evening. UFC Fight Night, February 22nd, this Saturday. Don't miss it. Climate Pledge Arena, ESPN Plus for all of the festivities there. All right, so that's going to essentially do it for Bando's breakdowns. But before we do, just wanted to give you guys a brief update that there's been some movement in college football around the Big Ten. There's been some coaching changes, is just in regards to assistant coaches and stuff like that. But just briefly wanted to mention that Michigan, it's going to be very interesting to see whether or not Bryce Underwood becomes the starting quarterback, because he's been the huge talk of this whole offseason. Will he play? Will he not play? Just something to keep in mind. There's been more info to have come out about Michigan. We'll probably get more into that on the newest edition of Bando's Blitz that's going to be coming out this Friday. But until then, look out for that. No errors this week, which means thank you again for tuning in. This has been another edition of Bando's Breakdowns. This has been episode 38. My name is Zain Bando. For everyone here at the MD The Bench Podcast Network, including myself, thank you again for tuning in. And just as one final reminder, Bando's Breakdowns is presented by Playback. So until next week, I hope you guys stay warm, and I hope you guys have a good one, and I'll talk to you guys soon.